Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on what time zone you are in. It's lovely to see you again, and thank you for joining this session 4 on digital capacity building. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Sorry, my video was off, but now it's on. So hello, everybody. My name was Craig Niles. I'm an urban planner with rban. I'm the team leader for the ASEAN Australian Smart Cities Trust Fund for rban. Before we go any further, I would like to do some brief housekeeping. The most important is that you're able to access the translation. This session, we will have simultaneous translation in Bahasa Indonesia, Khmer, Lao, and Vietnamese. To access the translation, please select the interpretation option at the bottom of the Zoom link as shown on your screen. Once you click on that icon, you'll be provided with a list of languages. For English speakers, you will also need to click on English. Please click on the language that you would like to speak in and also to listen to. Thank you. Next slide, please. This session will also be available a live transcript. Please click on the live transcript icon in the bottom of your screen. This is available in English only, unfortunately. If you want to react or would like to raise your hand to speak or ask questions, we encourage reactions and we encourage participation in this session. You can click on the reactions button and raise your hand. You can also click on the chat button and share your ideas and experiences and questions. And now, before we start, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which I'm speaking to you from today, the Darug country, also known as Western Sydney in Australia. I would like to acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging. Moving from a technocentric to a human-centric smart city strategies requires learning and capacity building to support the ideation, the development, and the delivery of smart solutions. We're excited to have you all here today to discuss how digitalization can support smart city and capacity building. We will introduce to you an online capacity development activities across the ASEAN region with examples from Southeast Asia, Australia, and from Europe. We would also like to facilitate a dialogue between stakeholders from ASEAN Australian Smart Cities Trust Fund cities and the other participants in this session. And the themes we'd like to exchange ideas and thoughts and experiences on, what are the needs for capacity building across ASEAN on smart city? And do we have any good examples of some of those areas where we're doing capacity building well, or share experiences where capacity building may have delivered benefits to cities in their journey towards smart city development? Thank you, Elka. So we have three speakers and me, 3 speakers today who will share experiences from around the region. Thank you. Next slide. But first, we're going to start with a Mentimeter icebreaker activity, which we'll go to in a second. Then we'll start with a presentation from John Hawke from the city of Perth. And then we'll go to a presentation 2, which will be from Jens Christian Riese, which will overview upcoming ASEAN Australian Smart City Trust Fund training programs. We will then go to Henrik Breinhoy, who will talk about online urban ecosystem-based adaptation course from UN Habitat. We will then finish with a question and answer session for the speakers and a guided discussion where you are more than welcome, and we encourage your questions and participation. Thank you. Next slide. So if you'd like to either select on a browser, go to www.menti.com and enter the code on the screen, which is 5823594, or you can scan the QR code on screen. And there is also a link in the chat box to the menti.com website. What we'd like to know from you in the first question is, which city are you from? So just to remind everyone, we'd like to know what city you're from in that first question. Please reach out if you are having difficulties accessing Menti. Thank you. Looks like we've got a good range of cities already from around the region. Is everybody able to access? Please reach out if you cannot access the menti.com website. Thank you. So we might move to the next question now, Olga. Yeah, so the next question on Menti for you to answer is, which sector do you belong to? And there's a range of options there: city government, national or provincial government, academia, you're a policymaker, or you're in a non-government or civil society organization, private sector, development institution, or a financial institution. Looks like we have quite a big spread with the focus on a lot of people from city government. That's good to see. That's great. Thank you all for participating in that. We also have some people in the chat who have also listed some other cities, from Puerto Princesa City in Palawan in the Philippines. I hope I pronounced that correctly. All right, thank you, Olga. That's really nice to know. So what we'll do, we'll share some of the outcomes of these Menti discussions and the chat, as well as the recording with you after the session. So first of all, I would like to introduce to you the first speaker. The first speaker is Mr. John Hawke from Perth City Council. John has successfully delivered projects from a range of industry sectors, including banking, defence, commodities, energy, commercial construction, state and local government. His current role as Economic Development Officer, Smart Cities in the city of Perth. John led a multidisciplinary team to deliver 7 projects under Smart City program. And I'd like to welcome John. John is a key member of our city twinning partnership between the city of Perth and the city of Baguio in the Philippines. Thank you, John. Over to you.
Hello, Craig, and welcome everybody to a lovely day in Perth. I hope you're having a good time. So yeah, as per the introduction, we'd just like to share with you some of our insights and some of the fun we're having with our colleagues at Baguio as we work with them on building their capacity and capability. So I think we'll go to the next slide. Thank you. Right, so this is just a little snapshot of some of the technologies that we are currently using across the city of Perth. I guess the key takeaway here is that we've been in the smart cities technology space for several years now, probably 6 years. and we have a large number of different systems actually up and running. They're spread out across the whole city area, and it's quite similar in geographic spread to Baguio. So that's that one. On the screen, you can see a pedestrian counter at the top. You can see one of our LoRa telemetry systems on this light pole, and a weather station there as well. All right, let's go to the next one. Oh, it works. So this just gives you a bit of an example of the spread and type of sensors we have throughout our city centre. Air quality sensors with smart bins, smart lights. So it's quite a range of technologies. I think the takeaway there is we've trialed a number of different vendors to get the outcomes that we wanted, and all of them are solving real practical issues for the city. It's very much a hands-on approach. All right, I think we'll go to the next slide. Thank you. All right, so let's talk about Baguio. Fortunately, it shares the same time zone as Perth does with much of Southeast Asia. When I first started working with the Baguio Council employees about 7 months ago, we started off with an investigation process. So what were they up to? What were their challenges? It's a city of around 360,000 people, but I understand it was only planned for around 60,000 people. So quite a lot of people packed together, and quite a complex geography. So very hilly, mountainous terrain. And you can see a little dot map there, which shows some indication of the population distribution. Great, I think we'll go to the next slide, thank you. All right, so let's talk about the collaboration project we have. ADB approached us based on some of the work we had done historically as to whether or not we would be interested in partnering with Baguio, and we thought this is a great idea. So their challenges are quite common to many of us. The City of Perth has had challenges with water quality. The City of Perth has had significant challenges understanding our pedestrian movements through COVID. And so there were quite a lot of similarities between the challenges that Baguio was facing and stuff that Perth had already worked on. So specifically, they have water quality issues. It's a very rainy climate, very complicated water distribution system. They have water supply challenges. In the summer, I understand they get close to some water shortages over there. As with many of cities in Southeast Asia, there's air quality challenges, and certainly happens in Western Australia as well, from time to time. Also, they want to understand crowd distributions to try and mitigate the impact of the spread of COVID. I don't know if you know, but parts of Australia flood quite regularly. So we're trying to share some of our flood early warning technologies with them as well. And I guess the final constraint is there's a finite budget. We need to get real things done with a fixed amount of money. It's not a lot of money. So we're trying to use effective technologies in the easiest way possible. Let's go to the next slide. Now, just bear with the team for a second. They're going to do a little bit of clever switch and hopefully bring up one of the live dashboards. The purpose of this is to show you that these are real solutions actually running live now. We've got live pedestrian data streaming onto our dashboard, and we've got live weather data streaming onto our dashboard. And you can follow either one of these links yourselves. Here we go. And you'll actually see this is the actual weather data in Perth: temperature, humidity, rainfall, solar radiation, wind, and the wind speed. So this solution is web-based, so it doesn't rely on any particular local installation of software. Anybody that has an internet connection, including on a smartphone, a mobile phone, can access this information. Right, we might try and go to the next one. Excellent. The guys in the office are doing a fabulous job. Thank you very much. So this is a live map. You see that little gray there? That little flicker is as it received another data point. So this is instantaneous data. So This is the pedestrian counts at a number of locations throughout our city. We actually have about 90 of these sensors throughout our city. And it's been absolutely critical for us to understand the impact of COVID. If I could just ask the operator to move the mouse a little bit, you can see a dip there on the top line on the left-hand side. That's when we had some early restrictions on COVID. And if you scroll over to the right, we had Omicron enter our city in January this year. And you can see that we can definitely tell the impacts of the city. By the way, we can also see big sporting events and social events and cultural events as well. So we really get a handle on what's happening on our city. This is just 5 locations. And as I said, we have about 90. So we can really tell what exactly is happening on our city in real time and make decisions based upon that. Just so that you know, this is the sensor that does that. It's quite simple, relatively cheap, and we just plug it into a power supply, solar panel quite often, and that's what generates that result. All right, we might go back to the slide deck then.
So does it purely service area?
Just whilst that's going on, this is what the weather stations look like. There you go. So a solar panel, a bunch of air quality sensors, and we'll typically attach that to a light pole or a power pole and sends all the data wirelessly to our network. Great. All right, let's go to the next slide. Thank you. So the strategy here is a 3-phase approach: design, build, and then install, operate. So the design phase is what we're in at the moment. We've been doing this for 7 months, and even now the knowledge transfer is starting. So the discussion of how does technology work, what's an effective location. Our Baguio colleagues are definitely learning a lot about how the sensors will work, how to site them. Lots of practical experience that we have from just hundreds of sites and many years of just knowing in the field what works and what doesn't. So extensive consultation, and there's no hard timeline. We're just working towards the solution here. The next phase will be to procure against the budget a bunch of sensors which we'll configure in Perth. So we'll test them, we'll integrate them. They'll all be baselined here, and then we ship them as a lot over to Baguio. And then the final stage, which is the exciting stuff, is the systems should go online, and that's where our colleagues in Baguio can really get the insights from the data and make actual changes to their city. Data-informed decisions in real time. So the chart there, you can see the existing technology that's already being used in some locations. They actually have a water treatment plant which is provided from a Perth-based company. And the map at the bottom indicates some of the areas of air quality and flood concern. All right, let's go to the next slide then. So this one digs into the COVID impacts specifically, and you can see where we had various impacts on our city. I know a lot of other places have had a really tough time. The key takeaway here is relatively cheap sensors on a robust, extensible data platform can provide decisionable insights so that the councils and the cities can make changes to their population and keep their population safe. It's our hope that this model will be effective in many other places throughout Southeast Asia by using proven, known, practical technologies that have a very light technical footprint, but we know will work. So that's my introduction. Thanks for your time. I'm glad the live demo worked. Back to you, Craig.
Thank you, John. I'm continually impressed with the work that you've done and the technology you've developed in Perth, and yours and Perth City's willingness to share and to help Baguio and the Trust Fund to communicate and build capacity across the region. We are adopting 2 city twinning programs under the ASEAN Australian Smart City Trust Fund. The other is for Makassar in Indonesia and the Gold Coast in Australia. That's also proving to be very useful in terms of sharing information, sharing experience to quite aligned cities, as John was talking about. For Perth and Baguio, Makassar and Gold Coast are also quite aligned in some of the pressures they're facing to grow and to build a smart, livable city. So what I might do now is introduce the second speaker. Jens Christian Riese is a member of Ramboll. He's our communication and outreach specialist for the Trust Fund. Jens Christian is responsible for interdisciplinary marketing, sales and project management on urban water and climate change activities, both in Denmark and across the world. JC, for short, has been a leader within the ASEAN Australian Smart Cities Trust Fund and a real driving force behind our capacity building and our communication and outreach. Thank you, JC. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Craig, for this nice introduction. Next slide, please. So yes, I mean, I'm really proud and happy to introduce to you some of the Trust Fund's capacity development activities that we have been working on for some time. And it's also my privilege to be representing a broad team of people who are working with me from within Ramboll and outside Ramboll. We just heard from our twinning colleagues from John in Perth, but also a lot of other people are chipping in and doing a great job. So I'm standing on the shoulders of many, many people that I could spend a lot of time mentioning, but let's get on. Next, please. So, I mean, one of the key, the cornerstones of the ASEAN Australian Smart Cities Trust Fund is actually to make platforms for networking and capacity development across the region. And this has been going on since we started 2.5 years ago. We started off with the communications and outreach strategy, which was signed off by ADB. We agreed that we wanted to do this, build upon as many new experiences as possible. So what you will see in a minute is a suite of different activities, but which actually started off with a number of webinars last year, interactive webinars, and then we've had in 20 cities across the whole region, we've had a number of introduction workshops, where we have tested the interactivity in the workshopping because of COVID, we haven't been able to do the traditional things. So we have done a lot of workshops in this online format with simultaneous translation into languages across the region. And this has proven actually to be relatively effective. So we'll continue down that path, making sure we're not just doing things in English, but also doing it in the national languages across the region. So the activities we are foreseeing now are, as we're having our networking conference, you're part of it now. We are then foreseeing webinars, a guided learning program, and then 2 thematic workshops on financial management and climate change. But actually in this list, we are also having a very important part, which was just launched yesterday, which is our e-learning program. Next slide, please. So we have developed, based on our introduction workshops, our team, a broad team of urban specialists and technology nerds have been developing an e-learning program on smart cities development. And that's becoming available on the ADB e-learn platform. It's a 3-step course right now, but more modules will be added. It's open to everyone, city officials, stakeholders from the cities and abroad, and you can access it through the elearnadb.org. Next slide, please. So the first module is introducing what you could call the livable city dream. What are the challenges that we are seeing across the ASEAN region, the rapid urbanization, but also the ideas of moving into what we could call next practice thinking. So it's basing, how should I say, it's based on some of ADB's basic strategies, but it's also introducing a number of important elements that we would like to build our, or that we are actually building our approach in the ASEAN Smart Cities Trust Fund on. Next slide, please. Then in module 2, we are looking into the enablers and the layers for creating a data-driven smart city. What are the main trends? What are the key enablers for making a city smarter? And different layers of digitalization. And then we're looking into some case studies where we can see how things have actually been moving in the region. Next slide, please. And it's also, as I said before, we are also having a strong strategic theoretical framework, the ADB Smart City Analytical Framework. That's been we are then introducing that. I thought it was in the first module, but it's actually in the third module now. And again, with clear recommendations for policy and decision makers. I think the whole idea here is to introduce the smart cities concepts of going taking technology into a much more people-centered approach, so that livable cities is our aim and not just technical cities. Next slide, please. So apart from the e-learning program, we are also setting up a guided learning program now, which again, you can hear more about. This is by application. There's an application deadline 5th of July, and it will contain 3 webinars, and then it will, which are open to all, but then the actual learning program will be limited seats. And the key audience will be people from the ASEAN smart cities that we are engaging with. The key focus here is data collection and storage, data governance and security, and analysis and decision making based on smart data. Next slide, please. Then, as mentioned before, we have developed a thematic workshop. All these themes have actually been selected in a needs assessment process with the cities, trying to find out where could we make the most out of the funds we have. And the first theme, which was identified, was this about data handling, data management, data collection and storage. The second theme was climate resilience. And we have developed this course focusing in on how can you address climate resilience with nature-based solutions? How can you operationalize the nature-based solutions in an urban context? So again, this is by application only. We are addressing professionals working in urban planning, stormwater management, and so forth in our in the participating cities. And we are asking them to work on their own cases in the cities, applying some of these approaches, the analytical approaches of identifying where would it make sense to make nature-based solutions, how effective could they be, and so forth in the city fabric. Next slide, please. And then the third theme, which was identified, was about financial management. A lot of cities are struggling to get their finances coherent and strong enough to actually finance the development of the smart cities. So we are having this workshop, interactive workshop, where there's a black spot on my screen. I'm not sure where it comes from. Anyhow, but it's with a focus on improving the knowledge base and the capacity of the cities to manage their finances, and it will be working on a case based as well, where people will be from the cities will be asked to work on their own strategies in their cities to work forward. Next slide, please. So these workshops will all be online, and the target audience, as said before, it's primarily city officials. The first two rounds or themes activities are open to all, and the 3 last ones are by registration. And here you can apply through our application site no later than 5th of July. And then we'll see how many will come in, and if there's a big audience, then we will definitely do our best to redo the courses and make it into a longer term issue. Next slide, please. So the application, yeah, you can scan the QR code, or you can go to this link. We'll be sharing the slides afterwards. So if it's of your interest, this is the way to do it. Next slide, please. So that was basically what I wanted to introduce. You're very welcome to come back with questions or comments on this. And I should have had a slide I can see now with all the social media platforms where we are continuously sharing new knowledge produced by the project. We have these platforms you can see here: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and a YouTube account where we are continuously uploading material that could be of relevance for developing smart cities. So that was all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, JC. And yes, I encourage everyone to go and visit those social media platforms and have a look at the videos on YouTube. There's a lot of really interesting, challenging, thought-provoking information on there, and the team has done a lot of work and engaged with a lot of experts to bring that information and those sites to you. Thank you, JC. That was excellent overview. I've got a few questions, no doubt others have. I can see there's a bit of interest in joining some of the presentations in the chat. But next, I'd just like to introduce our next speaker, and then we'll have a chance to ask questions of the speakers after that. Next speaker is Henrik Breinhoy, who will speak to us about online urban ecosystem-based adaptation course that he's developing with the UN Habitat Capacity Development Group. Henrik is an environmental engineer, and he has a PhD from the Technical University of Denmark. He's worked in sustainability in least developed countries for 25 years. For the past 17 years, Henrik's focus has been on online and blended learning, with the last 6 years being as an e-learning consultant at the University of Copenhagen. He's worked on a large consulting firms and currently operates through his own firm, Good Deed Consulting. Over to you, Henrik. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Craig, and good to meet all of you. Was it you who will change the slides or me? You're changing the slides. That's fine.
Yes, it's
good.
magic.
Great. All right. Yes, I'll talk about this online urban ecosystem-based adaptation course. A little bit about the UN Habitat Capacity Development. So it's not really about smart cities, but the smart thing here is the e-learning part and the way it's introduced, I think. Just next slide, please. UN Habitat is the UN organization that is working with urban development, and a lot, mostly in the global south, a lot with peri-urban areas. So they have developed this platform for online and sustainable online learning and on sustainable urbanization since 2020. And there's currently 11 courses on different topics. And this is to bridge sort of gaps that are in urban areas where people can learn more. And by doing it online, of course, they can now, it can be accessible to a lot more people. So everyone is welcome to go to the learn.urbanagendaplatform.org. And these are the people in the bottom here, Vida and Rafael, who is responsible for that platform. So if you want to access some courses which is not immediately accessible, you can contact them. Next slide, please. Some of the courses are here about the new urban agenda, about sustainable development goals, solid waste management, national urban policies, and so on. Some of the urban agendas that are emerging. Next slide, please. And here you can see that the even though it was only launched in 2020, they already have a lot of people, 46,000 visits, and 1,400 people have got a certificate for taking a course, and they are already a lot of people from many countries have accessed that. Next slide, please. Yes, but I'm here to talk about the course on urban ecosystem-based adaptation, or the real long name is Building Urban Climate Resilience Through Ecosystem-Based Adaptation. You could say the main learning outcome is that participants should be able to design and implement a strategy and actions for urban ecosystem-based intervention. That is what you should learn. But at the same time, we have the course in 3 versions. I'll show you in a minute. There's a second learning outcome also, that a group of stakeholders, when they take the course together, they can also kickstart an implementation strategy. Next slide, please. The course is really looking at the whole process of implementing nature-based solutions or ecosystem-based adaptation solutions. In 9 different modules, you're moving from simply understanding climate change and the risk associated with the climate change, over the vulnerability risk assessment. There's a big focus on decreasing vulnerability and helping vulnerable groups in this process. So there's a context analysis, stakeholder analysis, and then an assessment of the risks and vulnerabilities here. Then you set objectives. Do you want to reach for very high level development, or some middle kind of development, and then you shortlist the adaptation options. And then in this 4th section here, you go into implementation, how to finance it, and how to set up a monitoring evaluation framework. So this is the content of the course. Next slide, please. And then the course is given in 3 different versions. I'm developing the materials together with the Unhabitant staff here. So one of the formats is a format that we have almost forgotten now after the corona. This is the face-to-face workshop where people are actually meeting in the same room here. As you can see here, we tested the material 2 weeks, no, that was last week in Malawi, in Lilongwe, and the material here for the face-to-face workshop is some of the traditional materials. We know a PowerPoint slide, a set of PowerPoint slides, and also with some scripts, so to explain what each slide is about. So in principle, people could read from that script. There are some group exercises with printed materials, like you see these people here around the table is working group work on with some printed materials. There's some readings, videos, activities on the slides, and so on. And then there is the option here. One more slide, please. There's the option when you are together in a workshop face-to-face that you can also do field visits. So that's what they did here in Malawi last week here. So the objectives of this version here is both to learning the process, but also to getting started with the planning. You cannot do the whole planning, implementation plan, and all that in 3 days workshop, but you can get through the steps so everyone knows what is going on. Next step, please. And then we have the online self-paced version. This is not for a group of people. This is for one person to go through and learn all the steps here. So that material consists of the video lectures, some readings, some interactive presentation, knowledge checks, and then a final test here. So this is just for one person learning the process here. You can see the picture here of what it's going to look like. We're still in the process of developing this. The module 3 on stakeholder analysis and initial engagement here, you can see the different subtopics here. You can read it. Next, you can do some reading. Next one here. Some of the readings are packed in small boxes here to organize, so you get a fluent and easy to access way to go through it. Next, please. There's also some small assignments all the time, so it's not just reading and videos. There was also a video and that you can click on. Yeah, multiple choice here. Next one. Some interactive board here where you can read about stakeholder setups in different cities from different projects around the world. So you can click on that. Next one. You can also have these knowledge checks where you have to combine three different groups here with why they should be engaged in the processes and so on. You have to put those together. Next one, please. Or you have to move some cards to the right one here, which, yeah, it's not important what it's about, but the idea is that people are all the time engaged in doing something, not just reading. And with the long experience we have with making these things here, it's going to be a good experience to go through it. Next one. Yeah, and also here you have to put some cards on the right place. So that was format 2 about the self-paced learning here. And then format 3 is also can be online, it can be blended. And the format is that everyone takes the format 2, the online self-paced course, but then they meet in workshops in between. So, and those workshops can be either online, and one is a video conference based like we're doing right now. So you collect, typically I would say, all the stakeholders or different stakeholders from one city, and then you do all the activities when you're online. You see all the videos, you learn all the theory and some in the online self-paced course, but then you meet online or in a room face to face, and then you do the activities trying to work with these sheets here. And this is just a picture of one of the online exercises where you have to fill in some different forms here. So that is a very flexible material that you can combine. Sometimes it will be different from city to city, how much time you have, if you can spend one morning and then one morning the next week, or you can spend a whole day, or you can meet up one day and you can do it online another day, and so on. So the material here is very flexible in that you can learn it in many different ways, and it will be openly available to everyone. And so someone who has the capacity to sort of facilitate the learning process can do it with a certain city that wants to go into this urban environmental based adaptation, no, ecosystem based adaptation development. Yeah, last slide. Yeah, and again, you can find it on the platform learn.urbanagenda.platform.org. I would say from about September, October, when we have finished it. Thank you very much. That was all.
Well, thank you, Henrik. I think that was excellent. And I really like the various techniques and delivery methods you're using. I think it's a really comprehensive set of modules and set of delivery methods for a range of different different users. So thank you very much for that. I've got a few questions that I've been preparing, but what we might do now is for all the speakers, if the group, if anyone has any particular questions for the speakers, you can put them into the chat box or raise your hand if you would like to speak directly to the question. So I'll give you a few minutes to think about the questions that you might have for the speakers, but I've got a couple of questions that occurred to me while I was listening to the presentations, and thank you to everyone for your excellent presentations. Maybe you go to John initially. There's real benefits from capacity building tend to be optimized when the collaboration topics are linked to the challenges for the organizations that are involved in the city twinning program. Is very much trying to link those issues between the partner cities. Well, and a lot of our focus is on and a lot of the discussion we've had is on the focus about how we can support Baguio to utilize the learnings that you've had. What I'm interested in is also how that relationship benefits Perth City and building that long-term relationship with Baguio City. How is that going to help Perth City?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. So I guess firstly, we're in a neighborhood, right? We're all on the same planet together. So global issues like climate change and COVID and stability and development is an issue for everybody. So we're in this because we want to help our neighbours. From the city of Perth's point of view, we see ourselves as an enabler and a source for our region. And certainly some of these technologies take some time to develop and understand and get that practical knowledge. What we've done is we like to share that. So I've actually shared my physical sensors with neighbouring councils. When they install sensors that I have, they connect to our systems and they don't have to worry about all of the research and development and it's a whole lot of expensive data lake and security stuff behind. I won't bore you with, but from Perth's point of view, we see ourselves as supplying and supporting Southeast Asia in order for us collectively as a region to get on top of these multi-dimensional challenges. All the easy problems are gone. We're kind of just left with the hard ones now.
Well, thanks, John. And we did have a question in our Smart Cities planning session yesterday around waste management. And I know the technology you've developed that you're also using in Baguio was originally developed to help with waste management, and Perth is doing a lot of work and digitalizing and managing in a smart way that waste stream and how you respond to waste issues.
Yeah, some of the technology is reusable. So, for example, this is a waste level sensor which we put in bins, and we're intending to use a similar device to measure flood levels for early warning of floods. So the technology can be applicable to multiple solutions.
Very good, thank you, John. Now I had there's I can't see any questions in the chat, but I do have another few questions. Maybe an open question to everyone. We've heard a lot about different techniques and different ways of delivering capacity building and learning. What do you think the next practices are for capacity building across a region like ASEAN? What techniques or technologies will digital capacity building be focused on for the next, say, 5 to 10 years? And what do we need to do now, maybe to prepare for those technologies? What is the things we can start to data gathering or setting ourselves up in terms of understanding how to build capacity using these new technologies and using the digital space. Maybe I'll open it up for anyone to respond. First of all, what digital technologies do we think we'll be utilizing in the next 5 to 10 years? Are we moving to the metaverse? Are we using augmented reality and virtual reality? Are we? Yes, John, go ahead.
Yeah, good question. I think I'd go back to my point. We kind of only get left with the difficult questions, right? So to roll out solutions, I think one of the guiding principles we've had is solve real problems. So COVID is a real problem. We had a big issue with water usage in our city, and so we put in a live control system of our water system for our parks and gardens. So to answer your question, what technologies we'll be using going forward, as long as you start on something that solves a practical problem, then solve the next piece, and then solve the next piece, and then solve the next piece. It's an incremental process. I don't think we go from small to huge solution, because we need to learn the tools as we go forward in using smart technologies.
Thanks, John. JC, were you wanting? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I was trying to find the raise hand. All this technology thing instead of just doing like that. Yeah. No, I actually think that we'll probably see different trends that converge. I just came out of an interesting conference here in Ho Chi Minh City where we are discussing how to engage the youth in the agricultural sector and the production sector, and what those who have actually made this happen in larger scale, those areas or those countries in the region, it's because they've succeeded to reach out to actually make young people stay in the rural areas, and they can only do that by having access to different platforms, to educational systems, but at the same time combining it with practical action. So I think I mean the hybrid format that Henrik presented, where we will have to meet and do things in what you could call experiential learning, experimenting and trying, but then going back and sharing those ideas and going into the internet and finding new ways of doing that, or for that sake ordering new material or whatnot. I think it will be a combination, but if we're gonna manage I think the lifelong learning and using technological tools, because the next generation are so tech savvy. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. So I think we just have to accommodate for that and make them lead the way, because they are so flexible in the way they're combining different media. And I think we just have to tap into that and make them lead the way of how we should interact much more freely across all sorts of platforms. Thank you.
I absolutely agree. I've got my 6-year-old was teaching me how to use applications on my laptop the other day. So it's crazy the amount of ability that young people have these days at such an early age. Henrik, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think also, I mean, we're continuously developing all kinds of technologies. You're talking about the metaverse, which we don't have a chance to know what it's going to be like, but it could be it has some application also in the working life. I think, like JC said, it's all about finding also the ways to put things together in the situation, in the different options here. We had the COVID opened to so much to the video conference world. I mean, just that before that, I was working at the university before COVID, and we had a project with 5 universities in Africa, and we had tried a couple of times to make meetings online because the traveling was, also always cumbersome and so on. And we didn't manage. You know, one university would not be able to connect that day because of failure and so on. So, but suddenly after COVID came up, then then it was possible. We got a new program, Zoom, that was technically strong enough to keep all up, and so that just opens for a completely different. I mean, this really a revolution that we can sit and have meetings. We still have to practice the hybrid. Now we are in an online situation, and I see now we are all stumbling every time we have then people are together in one room at the same time. You have participants in other rooms, then it's always kind of problematic to make the sound and everything work well. So we have to learn how to do that. But this is something that the hybrid format and the online format itself for making, for teaching, for learning, for working together, using online tools at the same time you meet, you're also using the same tool online, so you can talk together, you can work in the same document and so on. I think this is we're just seeing the beginning of that, and then there may come other I think it's very inspiring to see John's all the different sensors that you're able to monitor everything in the smart cities, and that is also fantastic. But I really look forward to see how we can make more effective meetings and agreements and teaching capacity development with the online format where you also meet people.
Thank you very much, Henrik and JC and John. I think that was a good discussion, and we do have one question from Maya Bautista. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Maya, you had your hand raised. Would you like to ask your question directly? Or perhaps I can ask it for you, and maybe you can add to it if I don't quite get it right. But the question is, do you have available learning modules for grassroots people in the communities to make us more participative in decision making and more genuine sources of data for planning? So do we have available learning modules for grassroots people in the community to make us more participative in decision making and genuine, and make those communities genuine sources of data for planning? Anyone like to offer? Henrik?
Yes. I mean, the material we are developing now, this is on the nature-based solutions and how to develop that. In the meeting last week in Malawi, they had gathered quite some stakeholders, but one of the things that was lacking was the NGO participation. They lacked people from the areas to participate in that. And I just think it offers, the material that we are making now offers the opportunity for everyone to participate, and also in bigger numbers. You can organize meetings in one city area, another city area, to participate in that course. I think I would also say, I mean, there's so much available materials on the internet for learning material on this and that topic. So it's not a question of if there's courses available for NGOs. I think it's a question of someone taking up the training events and use what is available, because I think there's courses on almost anything now. It is just about organizing it in a way, and I think NGOs should use the opportunities to do that.
And maybe navigating all of those options, Henrik, and understanding what is out there and what makes sense to use is a skill or a technique in of itself. JC, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it's just a comment on that. I think, just as Henrik is saying, there's a lot of stuff out there, and we're also collaborating with some interesting NGOs, like Practical Action has been helping us in Baguio, and Asia Foundation, and these guys are also continuously developing their training material online. So I think, but let's see if we can find also through the ADB platform, ADB Learn, there's definitely material available. So it's more like we haven't developed it. We are also relying heavily on partnerships to move forward. So thank you.
Thanks, JC. And I think through the Trust Fund, we have also delivered some community surveys and piloted different techniques for collecting data from the community, both digitally and in person. And there's a range of techniques to support that aspect as well. Maya also sends a note here. I am the founder admin of Batang, Puerto Princesa. We are 40,000 membership. Would it be possible to collaborate? Absolutely, I think is the answer to that. We'll definitely reach out to you and link you in with all of the speakers, and through the Trust Fund. We can do that. You're welcome. So maybe I'm just checking the time. I do have a couple more questions. Is there any more questions from anyone participating? So here's a comment from Declan O'Leary and a question. So this is to Henrik. While Henrik's point on capacity development is valid, the issue is linguistic barriers, as the cost of adopting materials into local languages and upskilling local facilitators takes time, financial resources, particularly for LNGOs. I know, JC, you've had a lot of experience as well in developing nations, but maybe we'll go to Henrik first on that.
Yeah, I think it's a really valid question here. But we see also on this, you asked, Craig, what are the developments going to be? One of the developments is in interpretation. For example, this meeting is interpreted into 5 languages, really because, you know, Zoom is now providing that opportunity that you can do it, and then we do it. We can have people from different countries. So that's one thing. Another thing is the translation options on homepages and in different programs. I have worked with that recently. I'm trying to develop a teaching material for primary schools in the global South, and I'm, you know, by being a bit conscious about the format of your documents and so on, it's pretty easy just to press one button, say, now I want this in Bahasa Indonesia, I want this in Vietnamese, and you got it. So the material, and the point is, it's not so bad. I mean, you may say, oh, but that's a machine translation, then it's not good. It is actually very good. If you look, I mean, to many languages, and it could be for some languages more difficult, but I meet people from you know, Bangladesh who says this 6-page translation is perfectly all right. I mean, you can work with it, improve the language, but it's perfectly understandable. So I think this is coming up. And then the last thing is these simultaneous programs that we know now is on our mobile phones. That if I speak in Danish, I can get it immediately translated into Bahasa Indonesia in some of the programs. So I think that tools are coming up. It is just the imagination, I would say, that has to that sets the limit here.
JC, yes.
I'll do the old-fashioned. Thanks. Yeah, I think. I mean, definitely, we are already seeing artificial intelligence moving very fast on this, and we are using it. But I think we have to understand that there are the language barriers, and then we have the cultural. I wouldn't call it barriers, but it's there are so many cultural differences, and I think what we have been testing the last year or more on our online workshops is also based on an understanding of working in the ASEAN region. I've been working for nearly 3 decades, and I try to come in with a very westernized way of doing workshops where everybody should speak up in plenary and give their opinion, and it doesn't work because Asian people are very humble and very doesn't want anybody to lose face, and they would come to you in the breaks, and we had a lot of good discussions face to face in the breaks, but in the plenary sessions, forget about it. So I think we just have to acknowledge that there are so many ways of interacting in different cultures, and we have to understand that when we are doing workshops or whatnot, learnings, we have to take it into consideration. And that's why we're also using on this program, we're having our local focal points, we're having nationals helping us out, facilitating the processes in whether being in Indonesia and the Philippines, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and so forth. And I think, so in that sense, I think we can translate a lot of things, and then we have to really be conscious about what does it take to get training or get capacity development in a specific environment, not just national, but locally, of course, with whatever languages or groups, indigenous groups we're talking. Thank you.
Thank you, JC. John, you've raised your hand digitally. You're on mute. We were doing so well.
I just think the work that JC and Henrik is doing is so important. One of the traps I see in people trying to digitize their city and move into smart technologies is they think it's just the device or the hardware, and they really miss the learning and cultural relevance and the knowledge that people need to get the best out of it. And certainly as smartphones help us do more and more things, and the technology is getting easier and it is getting cheaper, I think we're then left with the thing that broadens our horizon, the capacity to digitize, is knowledge and sharing, collaborating in a way that works for the local community. So I think that the work that Henrik's doing in making the technologies and the principles accessible, digestible, usable locally is really going to send us a long way forwards, rather than just crashing ahead by buying something and then it doesn't work and then everybody thinks it's a failure. I think the human side needs to come along with it.
I think that's a really good shout out to the topic of this whole networking days conference is the transition from technocentric to human-centric approaches to smart city. Yes, Henrik?
Yeah, I also, I mean, it's true all what Jens Christian's also saying, that I'm not a technology optimist that say just the technology and then we have solved all the problems. It helps us a lot, but we have long experiences, all of us, I think, working with different cultures, and of course there's also always it's always a very important issue to how you use the things and also the technology, and it's something that is continuously a challenge and also an inspiration, I think, for all of us to do, and that's very important. Just we have to acknowledge that. Yes,
and it's a really good point, and I fully to be able to produce capacity building and use digital technology for the people, we need as many voices as we can. We need to collaborate across borders, across countries, across cultures. And in saying that, I've just acknowledged that I think, looking down the speaker list today and these pictures of us sitting here talking about it, we're sort of 4 white males talking about this particular topic. So I think it's up to us to make sure we reach out further and make sure we engage with everyone. And on that, Maya has put a quote in the chat box, and I'll just read this out. I think it's really poignant. Let's do this in the language understood by the people, making empowerment a reality and not just a slogan. And I think that's really what we're all saying, is to make sure that we deliver for the people and actually deliver real outcomes. Yes, John, one comment?
Look, to the point of culture and gender representation, the champion of our Baguio relationship is a female. She's fantastic. She follows everything up. She's been our leader in our little project. One of the people that is making a huge difference in our investigations is a very young man, young professional engineer, who's outside of his traditional skill set and moving into smart technologies. So I'm quite optimistic that that younger people and females and that because we're all trying to solve the problem. It's just a matter of getting the raw materials of knowledge and then building our own levels up. It's definitely smart technology and digital enablement has no boundaries. We can have these phone calls anywhere. There are people online who may be seeing this on their mobile phone, sitting in their car or at home in their lounge room in their office. One of the wonderful opportunities we have in the digital age is we can remove so many boundaries and so many barriers. We can melt them away and just get left with the real core of the problem. How do I solve this in my community? How do I help my leaders make the right decisions? How do I, as a small business or as a farmer, interpret the data and make a better decision for my local community? So I'm really optimistic that people are entering this field using these technologies for their own solutions. But yeah, our champion is a lovely, charismatic, friendly female. She's great.
Thanks, John. So we do have a few other questions. I think we need to get to the guided learning or the guided discussion section. So maybe, Alga, if we can go to the next Menti question. So for everyone, if you've still got your Menti open, you can see the code there at the top of the screen. If you've not logged in yet, you can go to menti.com and use that code, which is 5823594. That's 5823594. So the first question we'd like you to think about and provide an answer is, what digital capacity building tools do you think would benefit your city or your organization the most? So if you reach out through the chat, if you're having any issues with logging into Menti, I see Cassandra has put in the link again into the Menti. So what digital capacity building tools do you think would benefit your city or organization the most? So we have a small practical trials, and I think this talks to something that we've identified through the Smart City Trust Fund as well, is being able to scale and replicate the digital tools that we're piloting. And I guess, Henrik, you've been involved in this for a long time. That idea of starting small and having small practical trials and then building on that, is that an approach that you've utilized or resonates with you?
Yeah, I think that there's always a challenge in the digital world to include people, and that is not just the technical challenges. It's also older people, and also in our own society. It's a lot of people who are, there's differences in the access. So it's good, but my experience is that with a bit of training, and that you could say starting small, you get people involved and people get used to use digital tools. So I think that sounds good.
Yeah. And we've got a few other answers there. Apps and local languages. We've talked about that, and I think yeah, there are certain languages that maybe the digital apps don't work quite so well with. Some others that do work quite well with. But there always needs to be that local language review of the translations. Maybe we get better at picking up the technical language that a lot of us work with in city planning, with nature-based solutions and ecology. There's a lot of technical language that maybe needs to be translated in person, but I guess with greater technology that will improve over time. There's a lot of focus there on applications. The idea of sharing and using different apps to get the learnings and the experiential learnings out there. I did have one question relating to that. In the trust fund, we're piloting a lot of different delivery methods. Elgar, I think there's a few people in the waiting room, if you can let them in. Thank you. So do we always need to do both digital and in-person capacity building, or can we rely on digital capacity building as a sole technique? Have any of you got any thoughts on how we can, where we'd choose in-person over digital techniques?
I would say we cannot rely on only digital techniques, but we can put a lot of the collaboration and a lot of learning, and not collaboration, but the learning on the digital platforms, so where you learn by yourself, self-paced and so on, and a lot of also the collaborative also online, but it's so important to meet somewhere. But then so one of the thing is to really focus what you do when you meet, and that is activity. It is not listening to presentations and so on. This is really working together when you are together, and I think that's very important to meet in person, to give time for that usually. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so we've got gamification up there. I think that's really interesting as a topic, both in engagement and also in learning. There's a lot of opportunities, I think, to make learning fun and to use gamification to help learning experiences, particularly digital, and also hybrid techniques. So we might go on to the next question now, Elgar, and if you can move to the next question. So this one is thinking about what the biggest challenges that your city or your organization faces in adopting digital tools for capacity building. So where we're trying to deliver a learning outcome, what are some of the big challenges that we might have in adopting those adopting methods that use digital techniques for achieving those learning outcomes? Is there cost constraints? Is there we don't know what we don't know sort of constraints? Is it a knowledge piece? What sort of challenges that you might have? Okay, so first one up there is what we've been talking about already, and a stable broadband, and that's not just for the developers, but mainly the participants. If we're reaching out across the region, stable broadband is always always an issue. Cost, yeah. Cost and capital requirements. JC, John, Henrik, if you have any particular comments on the capital requirements for delivering digital learning, be interested to hear your thoughts on how we can do that. There was a comment in one of our sessions yesterday around cost and the decision to invest, and it really should be about what are the benefits we're trying to achieve and what the value for achieving those benefits. Yes, benefit versus cost. John, yes, to you.
Yeah, cost is an interesting one. My philosophy is to solve the most expensive problems. So if your city or council or farm or community has a most expensive problem, when you solve that or you attack a piece of that, it takes away the cost issue. So the city of Perth saved 27% of its water use by switching to a smart irrigation technology. So they're not discussing the cost of the technology now because the win was so big. If you have a project that's expensive and the return just isn't solving a big, difficult, expensive problem, then you've probably chosen the wrong project. So I would encourage people to really solve the big, difficult, hard ones. And that takes courage and some smarts because all the easy problems have been solved and we're left with the tough ones. COVID has been a really interesting problem for us to attack. And from the city of Perth and a lot of the people we collaborate with, having data-informed decisions has made a significant change to improving our economy and the quality of life for our people.
Thank you, John. Some of the other comments we have here is reaching elderly, and JC, I know we've done a lot of work in the trust fund regarding reaching disadvantaged groups or groups that don't have access to equipment, don't have access to data stream or internet, and maybe even the knowledge to use some digital techniques. So do you have any comments to make on reaching those groups that perhaps are disadvantaged?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Yeah, I think it boils back to a comment I had before. I mean, we can't really. You have to do this stepwise. First of all, I think that the youth will be the ones for pulling this forward, and then the rest of us, being 50 plus or being more or less digital illiterate, will have to be guided to. I mean, and of course, specific platforms that we need, we'll have to get help for that, because that's the only, I mean, you can't, that's why you can't do it just digital. You have to have support functions physically at hand, whatever, like we're having in our part of the world. There are specific centers. It could be libraries, it could be social centers or whatever, where people can go for free and get help with their PCs or their smartphones or whatnot to get access to, because I mean, Denmark, where I'm coming from, is one of the most digitalized countries in the world. I mean, and we've actually saved billions of dollars on fiscal budgets. But of course, at the same time, how do you make sure that no one is left behind? And that's even more when you have other kinds of societies where people may be challenged in literacy in different ways. But on the other hand, I think many of the countries we are working with in this part of the world, in the ASEAN region, has a completely different culture in terms of helping each other in communities and families and so forth. So I think you shouldn't be too afraid of actually having a few knowledgeable, literate people in your family, in your community who can help the others. That's just a comment. Thanks.
Thank you, JC. And I've recently had some experience with having conversations with Aboriginal Australians around city planning issues, and the way that the Aboriginal people pass on knowledge and stories is through stories and songs and talking about decision making, and it's really difficult to turn that into the digital space, because there's a lot of knowledge holders within the Aboriginal community that express themselves and make decisions through verbal communication and song and artwork. So that kind of needs to be considered when we're looking to adopt digital tools for different groups. John, yes, to you.
Yeah, I think that one of the other things which we probably need to call out is the data, and the digitalization is all in order for us to have a better life and a better society. But there is a political dimension to it, and there is a power dimension to it. Some societies and cultures are not willing to let the data inform the decisions. We face it in our organization. It's not. It can be a barrier to making progress. I've had projects where the data has indicated we should do this, but certain interests indicate they want to do something else, and that's a challenge for us. How do we move forward? I think we just have to understand we're humans, and not everybody's sort of growing at the same rate or the same way. And some parts of our society will be willing and open to let their data inform decisions, and perhaps other parts of our society are more conservative. But this goes to the broader education piece. The more we trust the technologies, the more it serves us more reliably. Hopefully it can guide us to making better decisions with bringing the community along board. It's a learning journey that we need to go along together.
Yeah, thank you very much. Go ahead, Henrik, sorry.
I would also say, I think it's really about the will and the consideration from the projects and from the authorities that that is important. That if you do your best to include people, then it may be difficult, but it will be appreciated, and it will work. I think the worst problem is that it's not done. People are not taking the time to do it. But I would say in that case, you can always discuss that the accessibility to digital things is a problem, and it is. And I think all communities, all cities should make their best effort to make facilities available and make import data available and so on. But it is helping us. I mean, it was worse in the old days when nobody could access the data, and I think it's really a matter of will and obligation from the authorities and the project leader, project management to include people. That is the issue. It is not exactly whether that technology is available or not.
Absolutely. I think that's probably a good segue. We do have one more question in Menti, but we've run out of time. So that question is what support would your city organisation benefit from the most? So I think following on from those questions, we'd be really interested to hear everyone's thoughts, either through the email to the trust fund or through the chat. What that level of support is, but we won't go through the Menti on this. But I just want to wrap up this session by giving a shout out to one of the, following on from the discussion we've just had with all three speakers. There's a comment here from Kiboy Tabata and who says regarding the barriers to building or developing smart cities, perhaps the inertia that also needs to be overcome is the capacity. or the lack of it for problem solving, whether through smart technologies or otherwise. And as a shout out here to John, John's remark on courage to solve the big problems really stood out to me. So I think it's that idea of having the courage to generate change and to push ahead, despite some of those comments we saw around political will and a lack of clear vision. Some of those comments really reflect on the need for people to have courage and pushing ahead with smart city and digital transformation using techniques. So I think we're right on time now. So thank you everyone very, very much for your attendance today and your participation. I hope everyone got some good information out of this. If you can see there's an evaluation form that we'd love you to fill out if you have the time. There's a link there and a QR code. If you can use that, that would be fantastic. Any feedback gratefully received. And also we're sending out certificates to all those who attended within the next week. And I understand there's a closing session on the other channel. Look forward to seeing you all there. But thank you very much. Please reach out to us. There's those social media platforms there. Just Google search us and you'll be able to contact us. We'll put your name in the chat, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you all very much. And I should say thank you to our three speakers, John, JC, and Henrik, for your time and valuable contributions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, John.
All the best.
Henrik, everyone.